We've all got messes in our lives. So many of my struggles have become what my business now is, and that became my passion. And when I started to tune into my own truth, that's when things just started to happen. It's like the pathway began to unfold with so much more ease.
You are watching the She Means Business show with me, Carrie Green. I'm the founder of the Female Entrepreneur Association and the author of the best-selling book, She Means Business. And every single week, I'm going to be talking with you about how you can turn your ideas into a wildly successful business and actually live the life of your dreams. You can do this, and I'm so excited to show you how. So let's get started.
Hello everyone. It's funny, I literally just hit record and the construction noise starts up again. Great. Anyway, we're going to do this episode because I'm so excited. I am joined by Trey Anthony, and she is so amazing, and I'm so excited to have you here. Trey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I feel like I just want to sit here and just listen to your story. I was watching your TEDx talk and literally have written down so many things that I wanted to say, like so many things you said in your TEDx, which were just so amazing. But for everyone listening, I just kind of maybe want to shape how this episode I think is going to go. Like, firstly, obviously talking about your story, but secondly, I think this episode is going to be so amazing and empowering for anyone who really, just wants to dream bigger, think outside of get themselves out of the box, kind of like what you talk about in TEDx, which we can talk about, and just how anyone with like ideas and creatives and people who create amazing things how they can turn that into a business and multiple streams of revenue and actually create a successful, happy, fulfilled life doing something they actually love, which I just think is so important for everyone. And that's what this podcast is all about, is empowering people to do that. So I'm excited to have you on and really talk about your story. I also made a list of all the amazing things that you've done. Sold out hit play, which has grossed millions and broke box office records practically around the world. Adapted for TV, and you became the first African Canadian woman to create, write and produce a primetime TV show on a major Canadian network, which is bloody amazing. You've written for Oprah Winfrey Network, Lionsgate, amongst others. You're such a sought after speaker. You are also this is a big one, author of the new book, Black Girl in Love with Herself. Amazing. I love that title. And I'm excited to talk to you about the book it's out already, isn't it?
Yes, it just came out last week, Tuesday. So it's out. So you can grab it on Amazon, wherever. Just get it. Just buy it. I keep telling people, buy the damn book.
So you have just achieved so many amazing things, and there's just so much I want to talk about. But let's firstly just kind of rewind and just dive into your story, because it's so inspiring, and also you're so funny as well, obviously, like with the comedic side, but I just love it. So I'm just going to let you talk. I'm going to hand the mic to you. Tell us about your story and like where this all started for you. Like, how have you managed to achieve so many incredible things? And also, how have you found the courage to speak up and use your voice in such a powerful way, which I just think is so important, especially into like today. So where's that all come from? How did it all start?
For me, it really came from necessity. I was one of those people. I had a grandmother who was amazing and always encouraged me. My grandmother was really one of my biggest cheering squads, and she always just thought like I was amazing at everything. So I was lucky that I had her as kind of like my hype man, I would say, or hype woman. And I had this notion from the get-go that I always wanted to be an actor. That was the first thing that I always like, I want to be an actor. And I was under the impression that if you were talented and you worked really hard, that you would get all of these amazing jobs and people would be knocking down your door. And so I ended up going and doing a course at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. And then I also got an internship at the Chris Rock show.
Wow.
And I came back from New York to Canada with this I really kind of had this like, oh, look at me, man, I'm the shit kind of girl. Like, that's kind of how I thought. And I was like, I'm going to come back to Canada. I'm going to get all these amazing jobs and everyone's going to be like, who's that girl? Right. And I got back to Canada and I got this amazing top agent. And the first audition they sent me on was Crackhead #1. And then after that, I got Girl on Welfare #2. And then I got Baby Mama #3. And I was just like, what is going on here? And I was getting all of these stereotypical roles. And I remember one day coming home crying to my grandmother. And I said, oh my God, they don't see me. And I hate this. And I said, they keep giving me all of these crappy roles. And all of these roles are crap. And my grandmother turned around, and this is her at all times. She was like, well, if they're writing your crap, then why don't you write your own damn crap? And that was how I became a writer. I never intended to become a writer. I was, as I said, out of necessity. And I wrote what was my first play called The Kink in My Hair. And it was supposed to be this one-woman show, which would showcase all of my talents. And I would be doing all of these different roles and stuff like that. And I decided to have just like a very small showcase where I could invite some audience members to hear what the actual play was about, and I could take notes. So I invited 6 of my unemployed friends who were also tired of all the stereotypical roles. And we had probably about 50 people in the audience. And after that, people were just like, oh my God, this is amazing. We loved the actors. We thought it was so great and blah, 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 blah. And then I realized everyone was like, you got to keep those actors. And I realized then I didn't have a role for myself because I had put all of the actors to play this. And I decided then, because some of the feedback that I got from everybody, they were like, it was so funny. I mean, it was so serious and it was so good, but we missed some of your comedy. Like, we know you to be quite comedic sometimes. And I decided then to write the role for myself, which would be the role of Novelette, who was this woman who basically ran this hair salon where all of these women went to. And that became my first show. And we entered it into the Fringe Festival, which is like an independent theater festival for for theater producers. And it's a lot of creatives enter it. And it became this overnight hit. It became this word of mouth. We broke box office sales, and it became the highest grossing play at the Fringe Festival.
Wow.
And from there, it got picked up by Theatre Passe Muraille, which is one of our big regional theaters. And that then also sold out its entire run. Wow. And then we got picked up by by Mervish Productions, which is Canada's biggest commercial theater producers. And they produce stuff like The Lion King, Hairspray. And we got into a 2,000-seat theater.
Wow.
And from there, it just kind of snowballed into a lot of, like, it became this TV show. And during all of this time, I still was doing a lot of stuff. Like, people asked me, and I know you talk about the business side of it, during this time, I was asked to do a TED Talk, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm not a speaker. I don't have anything to say. And they were like, we just want you to talk about your experience of like what it was like in your journey. And so I was like, okay. So I did this TED Talk that ended up going viral, which was Get Out of Your Box. And from there, I got a speaking agent. 2 speaking agents approached me from that. And they were like, you could be a speaker. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. And so I began speaking. And then from speaking, people then asked me, oh, would you like to do workshops? Could you do a workshop on this? And I just really, I think if there's anything that I've learned is when you are authentic and you stand in your truth of what's important, like everything in what I have created has always been rooted in me as a Black woman walking through this world. And then, of course, then there's the other layers that I have as a queer woman, and then as a woman who grew up working class, as a woman who grew up with my grandmother and my mother having me at age 17. So all of those things shape my experience. And I always say to people, because people always say, how is it that you are able to then just come out of that niche audience and become so mainstream? And I always say, I think when you come from a place of truth and authenticity, it then transcends race, class, and sexuality and gender, because people will find themselves in your truth. And that's always been something that I've always stood in, of like, I'm going to talk from this as my experience, and do all of the things that people may find shameful, like, and talk about, like, even in my book, I talk about being diagnosed with depression and me being so scared to go public with that, as someone who's such a public figure and everybody thinking I was this powerhouse dynamite person who was doing all of these things. And one of my friends who then said, "You have depression, but you seem to have all your shit together." And I said, "I do, but I still have depression." Right. And that was something that I was scared about talking about. And it was only when I went public with that, I got all of these emails and people asking me to come and speak about it, because they were like, "You are just so public about it and was just so raw and transparent about your experience and the shame and stigma around it." And I find anytime you feel you're the only person in something, people will relate to that, and you will find that you're not alone, and people will respond to your truth. So that's kind of how I've always built my career, around things that I have felt that I was the only one wrestling with. Like, even in the book, Black Girl in Love with Herself, I talk about some of the shame and stigma I had around money. Mm-hmm. And even the whole fact of, even when I was making six figures, I still came from this kind of shame around growing up working class and thinking I was going to lose all this money, and then finding myself in a relationship that made me feel very trapped and not secure, because my partner at that time made nearly 3 times more money than I did. And in that, I gave away a lot of my power, and I made my partner take over all of the financial responsibility of the house, that left me very much with no power at all. Uh-huh. And I talk about that in the book. And I have so many people, again, who wrote me and said, "Oh my God, I feel the same way. My husband is the one who runs our entire household. I feel so helpless." And you talking about the shame around money and you not feeling good enough, even though everyone sees you as the successful person, there's still that little girl in you who's like, "I'm not worthy of this." Right. Yeah. And I think all of us have moments in our lives when we're like, "I'm not worthy," or you get up one day, you wake up and you're like, "Whose life is this? I don't recognize it. And I actually don't want to be living this life." Right.
Yeah.
And I want to make changes. So that's kind of where I always come from. And that's my passion, is not to just talk, but also empower people. And I always say, I make my mess my message. And so whatever my mess is, that's my message. And I'm going to give you my message. So I work out the mess, and then I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is how I worked out my mess. Now I'm going to give you the message."
Oh my gosh, that is like the most powerful sentence. I think that is so empowering for people to hear, because we've all got messes in our lives. And like, I know for myself, like, so many of my struggles have become what my business now is. And that became my passion. And when I started to tune into my own truth, that's when things just started to happen. It's like the pathway began to unfold with so much more ease. And so often we resist it. And I think a couple of things, one of the things I found really interesting when you did your TEDx talk was that you said that it was like you're waiting for the call. I actually wrote it down because I just thought it was so powerful. And you said, waiting for the call, I wanted, like, waiting for the call, like you're waiting to participate in your own life. And I thought that is so powerful, because so many of us are just waiting to participate in our own lives. And then we have so many excuses when we finally get that call, we get that hit of like, okay, this is it. And then we're like, oh, no, like all the excuses. And I really related to that, because that was me. Like, I sat on these ideas and dreams I had for years and years and years. And like going in all these circles, not answering the call. And I think so many of us do this, and we don't give ourselves permission. We struggle to find that courage within to go for it. But I just love listening to you, because you make it seem like, in a way, it's simple. Like, we don't have to overcomplicate this. We can live our truth, and that's enough. And I think so many people, I don't know, just I don't know, we make it more complicated, but I suppose the biggest thing is like having the courage to answer back, to pick up the call, to go for it. Do you have any like tips or just even stories around like how you've really found that courage to really speak your truth?
Yeah, I think, like you said, for me, and don't get me wrong in this, because people always like, oh, you just make it happen. And I say, I make it happen, but don't believe that I'm not scared as I'm making it happen, right? Like there are times I am shaking. I'm literally shaking and going, I cannot do this, right? But for me, it's always been about quieting that voice that says you can't do this or you're going to fail. And then I'm always like, but what if it's even bigger and better than I thought? And I want to take that risk. And there are times when I've taken that risk and I've landed flat on my face. But there are so many times I've taken that risk and it's been bigger and better than I ever could imagine. And I always say to people, anytime that you quote unquote fail, it's not a failure. It's you just now knowing, okay, how can I now do this differently? You know, I talk about a lot of the times when I produced a lot of my own work, I went to so many theater companies at times saying that I wanted to, even after the success of The Kink in My Hair, you would think that I could go to any single theater company in the world now and say, oh, here's my new play. That didn't happen. And I had written a play called How Black Mothers Say I Love You. And it was all about the immigration experience of what has happened to a lot of women in the UK and Canada who came over as domestic workers from Jamaica and left their children behind, and then came to either Canada, the UK, or the US. And this was a story that was also my grandmother's story and my mother's story. And I went around and I shopped it around to so many theater companies. And the coded word that I got was, oh, it's too niche, right? So basically, I always know when they say it's too niche, they mean it's too Black, right? That our mainstream audience is not going to relate to it, right? And I was like, okay, all right, fine. And I decided then I was going to produce it myself. And I found my producing partner, Carrie, who's this little, I should say little because she's at least 6 feet tall. And I'm like barely 5 feet tall. Carrie and I started to work together for the first time. She's this Welsh woman, white woman, producing this Black play. And both of us got together and was like, okay, let's do this. And she was like, okay, I believe in this work and you can pay me after because I just believe it's going to work. And we went, usually when you produce a play in a season, it's 3 weeks. We didn't have enough money to do for 3 weeks. So we did 10 days. I put in my own money. Karis just put in her dreams and hopes and was just like, pay me after. When we were looking at the budget, we realized that we didn't have enough money to direct it. And I said to her, well, I've never directed before, but I think I can. Right? And she was like, okay, right? And so I said, well, at least that will save us a couple of thousands if I direct it. And I directed it myself. And Karis and I were out there handing out flyers. And we put it up in the theater, paid for it ourselves. We ran it for 10 days. And the second day it sold out the entire run.
Wow.
We then extended it. And then after that, the play got picked up into like 3 or 4 different seasons of different theaters came for it. It now is being made into a feature film.
Wow.
And we're now adapting it into a TV show as well. And I always think back, if I had listened to everybody who told me no, none of these things would be happening. Right.
Yeah.
And I was nervous because it was my own money that I put into it. But I think a lot of times we are always waiting for people to invest in us. Yeah. And we need to invest in ourselves and take the chances. And sometimes it's not as grand as we want it to be. Of course, I would have loved to have my play in 3 weeks running or in a big, huge theater. But I did it in a smaller theater. I did it for a shorter run. And then it happens. But a lot of us always want our dreams to be perfect before we actually execute them.
Yeah.
And I'm a believer in you start where you can. And you make it happen. So even if it's in your damn living room and you invite your grandmother and your cousin invites her best friend, you started, right? Yeah. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
But you gotta start.
Yeah.
And a lot of us just don't start because we're like, it's not how we envisioned it to be.
So true. So unbelievably true. Do you have are you really intentional about the kind of life you want to live? Or like, cause you just seem like you're just so intentional that like, that's not going to be how I live my life. Like, I'm not okay with like not just trying this out, not going for it. And I feel like people who have that kind of attitude definitely have a higher intention of like the way they envision their life going. And I found for myself that when I got more intentional about the kind of life I wanted to live, it shifted my ability to be able to take that little step and that next little step and that next little step, and then the pathway unfolds. And it just, listening to you, it sounds like time and time again that's what you're doing. And I don't know, so you are really intentional?
Definitely. And I love the word intentional because that's how I live my life. And the biggest thing that I've always said about me is I get very quiet. I get really quiet. And then I just always say this prayer, and I always say, God, guide my next steps and tell me what to do. I'm not sure, but I just have this belief that you are going to guide my next steps. And I've always been in, and at the risk of sounding woo-woo, right? At the risk of sounding,
I love it. You bring the woo-woo, yeah.
At the risk of sounding woo. I do believe that all of us have this inner guidance, but a lot of times we don't listen to it. Mm-hmm. And so I get really quiet. And sometimes I clearly hear the message and say, Trey, do this, and this is what you need to do next, or call this person or send this email. But I think a lot of times we get so busy with our lives, right? And the busyness of it makes us then really tune out of what the message is of what we're supposed to be doing. And I don't think I'm any different than anybody else. I just believe, though, I actually have this belief that God and the universe has my back, and they are going to tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so that is what I always say. Like, I write it down, then I pray on it, then I ask for some guidance, and you'd be surprised at how many angels are around you trying to make stuff happen for you if you just listen, right? And so that is what I have. I have this inner knowing that I'm going to be okay. And not even just okay, that it's going to be great if I just take my time to listen and know that I'm on the right track. Because I believe all of us are put on this earth to do something amazing with our lives, right? And maybe it's not to produce hit plays, and maybe it's not to write hit books or whatever, but as long as what you're doing makes you happy, right? And if you feel this is what your purpose is, then this is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of us just don't believe that we are supposed to be living a life of intention and purpose. Mm-hmm. And that is what I believe, that I want to live a really great life. I really do believe that. Yeah. And so for me, I go about that every single day of how I never want to ever wake up and go, oh, this was okay.
Yeah.
this was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay. I want to, and of course you have okay days, but I want to have an okay life.
Yeah.
That's the difference, right?
I just love everything you've said, and I just echo it all. And I literally do everything that you've said, in the sense of I ask for guidance, and I assume that the answers are all out there and they're finding their way to me, and I have to open myself up to receive the inspired ideas and the support. And when I get stuck, I ask for the right support to show up in the right way to help guide me along the way. And I trust that somehow it's going to arrive. And really tuning in and listening. I think, like what you said, I think so often we're so busy that we can't hear ourselves, and we disconnect from our truth. And like, this is something that I proactively work on. And I always say, because I'm often just doing these solo episodes by myself, rambling on all this kind of stuff. So I'm really happy that I finally, got someone on I can talk to about this. But, I just talk about how much the inner work it makes a difference. So often people think when it comes to business and success that it's all about strategy and marketing and the how to. And while that stuff is important, I really think that 80% of it, if not more, comes down to like what is going on the inside. Where are our intentions at? What are we making ourselves available for? What, you know, are we truly listening to ourselves and listening to that voice within us that keeps like saying things, or are we just resisting it? And for me, doing that work has led me to the breakthroughs and enabled me to create the success that I have. And just listening to you, it just makes me think, yes, like this is for real. And I just, you know, when you just want everyone on the planet to realize this, that's theirs too, that we all have this power within us that we can all tap into. And I just want everyone to recognize it. And that's what I'm so excited that you're here sharing this story. It's so powerful. And sharing it about, you know, in your book and sharing all these stories. But I want to talk more about your book, but I also do want to talk about, in your TEDx talk, you had this really funny story. It was when you started talking about dreaming beyond your circumstances, which I think is really powerful. And you talked about how your grandma decided that she wanted to become a rapper in her late 70s. Will you just share this story? Because it's bloody brilliant, and I really think that it goes to show like quite a number of points. So would you be able to share this with us?
Oh yes, I definitely will. So my grandmother's always had, and may she rest in peace, she's always been this huge fan of mine, like I talked about, and she was always encouraging me to do things. And so after coming to my plays and sitting in the front row for so many years, one day she came to me and she said, "Oh, Trey, Grandma has a dream as well." And I was like, "Okay, Grandma." And she was like, "Trey, Grandma wants to be a rapper." And I was like, okay, right? And as I said in the talk, I would like to say that I encouraged my grandmother, but I didn't. You know, I looked at her and I was like, "Grandma, you know, you ain't Drake, you ain't Jay-Z." And I was like, and I also think your time has passed, right? Like you're 70 something years old. This isn't the time to reinvent yourself, right? And my grandmother didn't listen. And my grandmother then went into the studio and she wrote her own song. And there's clips in my TED Talk where I show her in the studio with her headphones on. And then my grandmother burnt maybe about 20 CDs at the time. And she went and started selling them in the barbershop and hair salons. And then she went down, you guys will know this, because when I talked about this in Canada, people didn't know. She went down to the Trisha show, which was this popular talk show in England. And she went to the security guard and said, "Oh, I'm here to see Trisha. and I want Trisha to hear about my CD." And the security guard kind of went, okay. It doesn't kind of work like that. Like you just don't come and say, "I'm here to see Trisha." But he took the CD and for whatever reason, I don't know what it was, he went and listened to it. And he was so inspired by my grandmother, he actually gave it to the producers at Trisha. And Trisha invited my grandmother to come in and talk about her show, her CD. And not only that, she invited my grandmother to come and give advice to people on her show. And my grandmother became this little sensation. And then she got invited by CBC Radio in Canada, which is one of our biggest national radio stations, to talk about her life. She also then got a couple of stories in newspapers and everything. And she was just so excited and so happy that, you know, her CD was selling. She also got this National Arts Award.
Wow.
And people were learning about her. And during this time, my grandmother got diagnosed with stomach cancer. And she was taking chemo. And as some of you guys know, when you're taking chemo and radiation, she was getting really ill and really sick and not doing well at all. And she decided to stop. And we all knew if she stopped that she would die. And I went to my grandmother and I was like, "Grandma, come on, man. You got to take the chemo. You got to take the chemo, right? You got to live." And she turned around and she said, "You know what, Trey?" She goes, "I've lived my life. I have lived my dream." She said, "All of you thought I couldn't be a rapper, and I did it." And she said, "You know, and I lived the best life I could. So if God said to me, 'It's your time,' I'd say, 'God, I'm ready.'" And I always remember that. And as I said in the talk, I said, I hope that when I come to the end of my life, you know, if this is my last second, my last minute, my last hour, that I can turn around and I can say, God, I'm ready because I lived my life. And that was the biggest lesson that my grandmother ever gave me, was that it's never too late to dream and live your life and be able to just look up at the heavens and say, I'm ready because I did everything that I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that is how I live my life every day, of always remembering that I want to be able to say I did it all. And I did it with a level of grace. I did it with a level of integrity, a level of kindness, and a level of trying to leave the world in a better place than when I showed up.
Yeah.
And that's how I try and move through the world.
It's so amazing. And I think, again, like coming back to intentions, like it just totally shapes a life when you have that level of intention about the way you want to live your life, the way you want to show up, the kind of person that you want to be. And again, like we all have the power to make those decisions about ourselves, but so often we don't think we do have that power. We think that we're defined by certain things. And I think it's such a powerful story. And I loved it. It's so inspiring, you know, again, even showing you can do anything at any age, you can go for it still. There aren't that, you know, I think it's just really powerful. So I know you've talked a little bit about your book already, but I wanted to talk more about it because it is out now. And I just think that, like, it's a really important time for this book to be out. So can you tell us more about the book and like who it's for and like why everyone should go and buy it? Because I think everyone should go and buy it.
Yeah, for sure. The book is called Black Girl in Love with Herself. And it is a book on how to live your best damn life and to live the life that you truly deserve. It's funny, when I first wrote the book, I had a lot of friends who were not Black who were like, Trey, can I buy the book? Can I buy this book? And I was like, yes, you can buy this book. Of course, it's written through the lens of me as a Black woman and telling my story about how I came to the journey of self-love and hitting my rock bottom. When I first got the book deal and I proposed the book to Hay House, it was supposed to be a book about manifesting your dream partner and how to be in a wonderful and healthy relationship and how I had manifested this great love in my life. How I'd written everything down and all of a sudden my partner, she walked into my life and I was like, oh, there you are. And she was like, yes, here I am. And we were like, oh, let's be together and let's live wonderful, right? And that's what I thought I had. And 5 months before the book was due to the editor of this wonderful book on how to manifest a great love and live your best life, my partner sent me a text. Text and said to me, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, what? I was like, but I got a book all about our great love. And I can laugh about it now, but really and truly, it was one of the worst moments of my life. Not only had my partner ended our relationship via text, our 5-year relationship via text, I had a 2-week-old baby that we had just adopted.
Oh, wow.
And my life was in shambles. And I called up the editor of Hay House and I said, I can't write this book. How can I write this book when I miss the tsunami that was hitting my own damn life? Like, what was happening that I did not know that my whole relationship would have blown up in my face? And I went through such heartbreak and that was also when I got diagnosed with depression. I was devastated. I had 10 days to leave our apartment. Mm-hmm. I was homeless. I basically went and I want to say homeless in quotes because I did have the money and the resources. If I wanted to find an apartment, I could have, but I was in such shambles and I had no energy that I moved back home with my mom because I just didn't know where to start. Uh-huh. And I called up the editor and I said, okay, I may not be able to write this book, but this is the book that I can write. I'm going to write a book called What to Basically Do When You Are on the Bathroom Floor and You No Longer Recognize Your Life, and How the Hell Do You Get Back Up? That's the book I'm going to write. And that's what became A Black Girl in Love with Herself. It was a lesson in everything that I'd learned of how to get back up, but also learning, how did I get to that place? How did I miss all of the red flags? And because I was so invested in being this perfect couple, being this power couple, and also being at an age, I talk about this in the book, where I was in my 40s and I didn't want to start again with somebody else. And so I chose to ignore all of the signs that this wasn't as perfect as I wanted to, because I didn't want to start again with somebody and be like, what's your favorite color? I didn't care. Right? I just didn't want to do that at my age.
Yeah.
And I talk about that, how as women, sometimes we stay in things because we don't want to start all over. We stay in things because we want someone to write hashtag couple goals under our Instagram page. We stay in things because we have children and with somebody. We stay in things because our families think we got it all together. And we stay in things because we don't want to be quote unquote lonely.
Yeah.
But sometimes you could be lonely in a damn relationship.
It's very true.
Right? And so that's what this book is about. It's about how us as women can get back up, but also look at what things that we learned as children that made us stay in things which may not be serving our best for us. And that's what this book is all about.
It's absolutely sounds like the most incredible book, and I'm so excited to read it myself. Just I feel like, you know, people, it's going to empower and inspire so many people to, I just feel like they can actually do it, like do this. Like, I think sometimes when we see other people opening up and being vulnerable about what they've been through, it helps us to recognize we're not alone and we can get out the other side. And on the other side, it can be amazing and incredible. So yeah, what an inspiring book. I'm so excited, and I feel like, I mean, if this episode has been anything to go by, I feel like everyone needs to go and read your book, because it's just, you're such an inspirational person. You're so empowering. Honestly, I just love everything that just you're saying. It's just the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's real as well. It's, you know, it's something that we've all got this inside of us, and I think that's the biggest part of it all. You know, we can all choose to take on a mindset more like the mindset that you have, and to live our best lives, and to get to the end of it and to be like, I've done it. Like I did all I could. I lived my best life, and that is literally life-changing in itself. So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm going to leave the link for everyone to go and buy your book. Thank
you.
Yeah, I think it's really inspiring. And I'm just so grateful that you came and chatted with me today. I literally feel like I could sit here and chat to you for ages. I just want to hear more of your story, and just more, because I don't know, it's like fueling me. It's making me feel like, yes, this is like, it's just so empowering. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm excited to watch what you do next, and all the incredible things with like the TV stuff. When's that going to start coming out?
Well, we're hoping as soon as we get a big TV deal, it will all be coming out. Right now, we're in the development process, and so we're developing it. And so we're hoping How Black Mothers Say I Love You will come out, get picked up by some network really soon. So putting it out into the universe, you guys pray on it. Yeah,
that is so exciting.
I'm sure it will all come to fruition as soon as the universe is ready for me. That's what I always say.
Definitely. Definitely will. Where is the best place that people can go and connect with you? I'll leave all the links, but
sure. I'm on Instagram under Black Girl in Love. I'm also on Facebook under Trey Anthony, Trey Anthony. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not as good on Twitter, I have to admit. So if you want to interact with me, Instagram is the best place, and Facebook, but I'm working on Twitter. And you can also go to my website, treyanthony.com, and it has everything all Trey on there as well.
Amazing. And your TEDx is on there as well. I'll leave that in the links as well.
Yes, and my TEDx is there as well. And we also have a if you email me, admin@treyanthony.com, we also have this Live Your Best Damn Life campaign online resource where I meet with women once a week in this community. We discuss the book. I give tips and videos and everything. And that's under the Mighty Network.
Amazing.
And that's under Black Girl in Love as well. So that's the community that we just support women, and they come and talk about their dreams. And I give you guys goals and intentions and everything. And I'm up close and personal. It's kind of like my OnlyFans page, but I just don't take off my clothes.
But I love that, and I think it's going to be so empowering, because I feel like, you know, the more that people can see what's possible and see like what other people are achieving and doing, the more people are going to realize that they could do that too. Like, I remember wanting to be an actress when I was growing up, and the only reason I actually wanted to be an actor was because they were the only people I saw on like magazine covers and in interviews where they were just actors. And I was like, well, this is what success looks like. So I should be an actor. I was absolutely awful at acting, like cannot act to save my life. But it's because there weren't any other role models. There weren't any, like, people like creating things and, you know, putting their creations and ideas and, you know, coming up with businesses that wasn't there. And I just think it's so important that everyone has role models and that everyone can see what's possible. And so that community sounds incredible and very empowering. So Trey, you've been amazing to talk to. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for listening. And I will see you next week for another episode of the She Means Business Show. Bye, everyone. I hope you loved this week's episode of the She Means Business Show. If you want more help and support to build a wildly successful business, then join hundreds of thousands of women and become an FEA insider. You'll get access to some of our amazing freebies, to our bonuses, to our giveaways, to so much good stuff. Head over to femaleentrepreneurassociation.com/insider to get all of the goodness. And I will see you next week for another episode of the She Means Business Show.